Hello, hello, hello folks. Something a bit special this week. So you guys are always asking lots of really good gardening questions, but my knowledge and experience only goes so far and I can't always answer them. So this week I brought in the big guns. We've got 4 other YouTube gardeners joining us today in the video to answer your questions. So best get them all introduced, shouldn't I?
Well, hello everybody. My name's Malc. This is Sugar. Never name your hens. And my allotment's called Allotments for Fun and Food. And that's pretty much what we do up here. Plenty of fun, lots of food. And I say up here because we're about 1,000 feet above sea level. And that brings its challenges. But we have good times. Looking forward to this.
Hi everyone, I'm Hannah from Allotment for Life and I'm filming this from one of my greenhouses on my allotment outside Oxford in UK.
Hello everybody, I'm Steve and this is GreensideUp, my 2 allotment plots here in northwest Cumbria in the English Lake District. And a big thank you to Ellie for putting this together, for gathering us YouTubers together to answer a set of questions and to hopefully inform the viewer. So I hope you enjoy this everyone and watch right to the end because each gardener will have their own little nuggets of wisdom, helps, useful hacks. Don't miss one of them. And thanks again Ellie, much appreciated.
Hi everyone, my name is Emma and I vlog over at Emma's Allotment Diaries. I vlog all about my first ever allotment plot here in South London. I'm actually in my 2nd year of the growing season and I am finding this year so much tougher than my first year. The slugs and snails are just eating everything, guys.
So for those of you joining us for the very first time, I'm Eli and this is my kitchen garden where I grow all my fruit and veg here in beautiful East Lothian in Scotland. And a bit different from all the other guys you're going to see today, I don't have an allotment. So as I said, this is my garden in East Lothian and genuinely it's a garden. It's a city garden, so it's an average size garden in between lots of houses in the street. So I have limitations of what I can do here, as well as conveniences like I'm really close for the kettle and the loo.
Have you had any success growing corn is the question, and I think you can see I do have success. Just take this front off and you can see this a little better. These are my, what I call my hot boxes. They're panelised. Just, as you can see here, just a panel frame, very simple, covered in plastic, and they bolt together with big bolts and thumb screws. And it gives these plants protection early on in the season. Now, sweet corn is a grass and is, as such, very shallow rooted. And with the wind, you can get this sort of effect. And it blows it. And with the shallow roots, you can easily break it and that can inhibit the growth of your plants. As they're a grass, they don't fall into any part of your crop rotation if you're operating a 3 or 4 bed system. But they do need lots of food at their roots and also a lot of moisture too. So you've got to watch out for things like this. These are side shoots, just pull them away. And that, would you believe, there is also a side shoot that will detract from the final harvest. Now, I put them in these hot boxes, as I say, to give them heat because they are a warmth loving plants and to give them protection from the wind. And you can see the growth. There are other corn plants planted roughly at the same time as mine on this site, and they're all up to about here, maybe a little bit taller, but giving them this protection allows them to get away with such a vigor that's it's quite unbelievable, to be honest. And they're already flowering now and I've got cobs forming on these. So yeah, I have had success with them. I say size isn't everything, but size does give you that vigor and it gives it that oomph for your harvest for when it comes. So you can see I'm going to get 2 or 3, maybe even 4 cobs from these plants. A smaller plant, you'll get 1, maybe 2. So by starting them in April, getting them going and protecting them all the time, these panels will stay on now until I harvest, and then I'll move them off and do something else with them elsewhere in a plot. But yeah, that's my tip for success, is protect them, because these are big sails. And once the wind gets hold of them, it'll bend them flat, break all the roots, and your plant will die. So there we go, that's as easy as it is, really. And eventually, these cobs here will get little hairs, like these here. Now, each one of these hairs goes directly to one of the kernels on the cob. Up there is the pollinator, and if you shake that, the pollen will fall down onto these hairs. And what's useful to do is I just come along and ruffle them up just to spread the pollen around, to make sure that each kernel is pollinated. Otherwise, you can have that situation where you peel a cob back and you've got rows of corn missing, or patchy at best, or misformed. So make sure that the pollen gets all around it. And when these are brown, almost turn to black and they're completely limp, that's when you know your cobs are ripe. So that's it. Yeah, I've had success with corn. I do this every year and it's very successful. And this variety, very cheap. I get it from Premier Seeds, and I'll get about 40 seeds for about £1. So the whole crop, £1. You can't argue with that. There you go, sweet corn, incredible, F1.
Sweet corn comes from a much warmer climate than the UK. So one of the main things that people struggle with sweet corn is the germination. And sweet corn needs the soil to be above 18 degrees, otherwise they will rot, and obviously not too wet. So if it's colder than that and you direct sow, they're just not going to come up. So what most people do is sow them in modules and then plant out. Or you can wait until June or late May and sow them then, obviously depending on where you are and also what the weather is like. This year's been very cold, so I wouldn't have recommended sowing them in May, but you know, you can do it a few ways, or you can pre-germinate them in some tissue, for example, in a warm little Tupperware, in a warm place in your house, and then plant them into modules. I tend to just sow them in modules and plant out. I find that's the least time consuming, and then I can sow a few more seeds, and then if not all of them germinate, then I have spares. The question also included if I have any variety recommendations. So obviously sweet corn is can take a bit longer to mature, maybe. That's why we try to grow them as soon as possible, so that they have the time to actually form the fruit. If you're more northern than me, then yeah, it's definitely something to consider. So the quick varieties like Swift and other ones that are labeled as early are good choice. If you have the possibility to grow later varieties too, and even like a middle one, like the late one I would recommend is Tramont, and it is a late maturing one, so then you would get a longer season of sweet corn, so you could eat the early ones and then the mid-season one and then the late season ones. I don't have any mid-season recommendations yet because I'm trialing some this year. I'm growing bicolor, I think is a mid-season, but I couldn't swear on it. And the thing to remember about sweet corn is that they are super sensitive to frost when they are young, though if you're growing corn for popping, like flint corn varieties, for example, glass germ corn is very popular, then I was worried last year about my corn plants because they take so long to mature. The flint corn takes much longer than the sweet corn. And I spoke to another grower in Mexico, where they're more where they come from, or the landmass where they are more grown, right? And he said that once there are large plants, they are not sensitive to frost anymore. Well, to a degree, they're much more frost hardy. So once the cobs have formed and you're just waiting for them to mature, you don't have to worry about the frost. So,
have I had any success growing corn, and what varieties would I recommend? I'm assuming you're talking about sweet corn because that's the only kind of corn that I know, and I have had success for the first time ever this year. Last year I did try sweet corn about 5 different times and I just couldn't get it to germinate. The variety that I'm growing this year is called Swift. Swift F1 is the exact variety I'm growing. Apparently it's quite a small crop, so I'm not going to be expecting massive sweet corns, but that's fine by me as long as I get some. What I found worked for me this year is starting them a lot later. So sweet corn and kernels really like heat. You must grow them in the heat. They only like the warmth. They're not going to grow in the cold. And what I was doing before is sowing them far too early indoors, and they were germinating. And then when I went to put them outdoors, they were just dying because it was just too cold. So I started my sweet corn this year in June, which feels really late to me, but I'm sure you'll agree it has actually paid off, and everything is growing, so I'm really looking forward to having sweet corn for the first time this year.
Well, here we are. I guess this is what you're getting. Lovely strawberry plants, nice and healthy, but no flowers and no fruit. And that, of course, is because these are perennials, and they spend this first year driving down a really good strong root system and building up good foliage, making sure the plant's in really good condition for its second year, when hopefully you'll get lots of flowers and lots of strawberries. Now, that's not to say you won't get any flowers or any strawberries on a first year plant, but in my experience they tend to be, well, small and few and far between. And these were taken from runners off of the plants about August last year, and 1 year on, we're in July now, and they're looking great, but just not delivering. And that's the way it's going to be. And next year, good times.
Strawberries then. Remember I said it's a city garden? That's a train. Strawberries. Okay, so as Malcolm said, the thing with strawberries is in that first year you grow them, they're not going to do great. You might get flowers and fruit, but you might not. Second year, third year, they should be a lot better. So if you're struggling and you're not getting flowers and fruit, it could just be it's their first year. They need time to bed in and settle. If it's not, there might be some other things that are causing problems. For instance, are they getting enough water? Because they really need water for the fruit to swell and ripen the fruit. Obviously, the plants need water just to survive and be happy, but also they need nutrition. And a lot of people forget that plants need food as well as water. So if you don't have them grown in a nice big bed with nice compost and it's all rich, you may find that they're actually lacking in nutrition. So this bit behind me, this is new. These are all first year strawberries. This is a pallet planter that I made this year because I used to have my strawberries in the bed and it did so well. So well, in fact, that we kind of got sick of strawberries and we were giving them away. Hard to believe. So I built this to give me a bit more space so that I could grow peas and beans in that bed. But the thing is, the first year, so they're not doing as well as they used to do. Also, they don't have a lot of space, so I'm not sure how well they're going to do even next year. I'll have to keep on top of that and keep checking it. So good. And the other thing is, strawberries are like everything else. You get different varieties and they fruit and flower at different times of the year. So maybe you were expecting yours to have flowered and fruited by now, but maybe they're late and they actually don't start giving you flowers and fruit until later in the year. So these ones are Everbearer Albion, and I know that they should be fruiting end of June through July in my climate. They'll fruit much earlier if you're down south, but here, this is when I get them. On this side, I've got pineberries, and they're much, much later. And up along the top are later again. So you just have to know. It could be that it's too early in the year for them. They're new plants and not ready to flower yet. Could be they need some food. I'm feeding mine every week or so now that they're fruiting because they're not in a bed and there's not enough nutrition in these little pockets. So some things to think about.
So cucumbers are a little bit tricky in terms of male and female flowers. If you're talking about greenhouse cucumbers, I highly recommend that you go for the modern F1 varieties that are all female, because you get much better fruit from them, as in they are not going to be bitter. So the bitterness from indoor cucumbers usually comes from when they've been pollinated. So either you grow an F1 variety, or you are vigilant and you remove any male flowers from the cucumber plants. Outdoor, I just let them get on with it. And the bitterness in a cucumber or the squash family is actually not good for you to eat. So if you do a taste test on squashes or cucumbers and it tastes really, really bitter, don't eat it, obviously. The bitterness is there to warn you that it's too high in this toxin that is common in this family, so discard those. That can develop from stress of the plant as well. So if the plant has experienced a drought or cold or heat shock or any of those things, the fruit can tend to go bitter. It doesn't mean that all the fruit on the plant will end up bitter, but and also picking them early might also help. But you don't have to worry about pollinating your greenhouse cucumbers like you would with your winter squash or your melons or something like that. So they're slightly easier to grow.
So welcome to my messy greenhouse. It needs a good tidy at the moment. But I thought I'd bring you in here for the question about what would I always grow, what am I never without? It's these guys. No matter what else, tomatoes, homegrown tomatoes are just so much better than stuff you buy from the shops. And I'm really lucky that I've got a greenhouse. Now, here in Scotland, some people are lucky and can grow them outdoors. To be honest, it is rare. Not everyone in Scotland can grow them outdoors, and unfortunately I can't. I just don't have an area of the garden that gets enough sun and enough warmth to be able to do that. But I'm really lucky that I've got a greenhouse I can grow them in. You don't need a heated greenhouse. An unheated greenhouse is perfectly fine. All you're doing is extending the season long enough for a plant like this to grow, because it needs a decent amount of time in the warmth. But I would never ever be without my tomatoes. If I didn't grow anything else, I'd still grow these guys. Closely followed by my peppers.
So what is the one crop that I grow on my plot every single year that I could not be without? I have to say strawberries. I don't know how you can have an allotment plot and not grow at least some strawberries. They are just the most amazing thing ever. Nothing quite says summer like picking your first strawberry of the season. Oh. Unfortunately, the slugs and snails do like them too, but I do get some.
Well, this is my must-have vegetable, and it's the national emblem of Wales. And of course, it's the humble leek, and it's extremely easy to grow and endures the winter months. You can pick this through the winter, rain, sun, or snow in my case. And well, it makes fantastic eating, particularly if you like cheesy leeks, which is a real delicacy. And well, I love it. So I sow these into deep containers, and then I leave them. I don't have to worry about them at all, apart from a bit of watering, until late May, June, and then out they come, one big block of soil into some water, and then quite simply you tease the plants, tease the roots away, and you've got all these plantlets which just pop down into holes that you've made, water on top, job done. Easy leeks and cheesy leeks. Fantastic.
The thing I grow without fail every year is peas, and they grow really well in my climate. I start them super early, and so that they are finished cropping by the time I get invaded by the pea moth and they lay their larvae in the flower, and then they eat the peas later on. So yeah, peas every year for me.
Well, I'm sure that people have more difficult growing conditions than I do, but the season here is pretty short, and we get some pretty harsh weather in the winter months. We can have long periods of snow, we get very, very cold periods, and well, we get some harsh winds as well. So it makes the season here relatively short. And this particular vegetable that I'd love to grow but can't requires a good early start and some frost-free environment outside, probably until the end of May. So it pretty much isn't going to work here. And I could grow them indoors, but Mrs. K puts up with a lot already, and these would take quite a lot of space. And of course, I'm talking about the sweet potato. This is a delicious vegetable. I really wish I could grow it, but I just don't think it's happening here. And maybe I'll try one day. Perhaps if I sacrifice growing something else indoors, I might get a few of these underway. We'll see.
One of the things I would really love to grow is leeks. So many people around here grow leeks, so I know that you can grow them in my area, but I've just had no luck with them, like ever. Like for me, they just stay like grass forever and they never seem to get any bigger. These are the best leeks that I've ever grown so far, and even they're looking a little bit like grass-like. So I don't know where I'm going wrong, to be honest.
So the thing I wish I could grow is large watermelons. Like those massive ones that you buy in the shop. I would love to be able to grow that. I was traveling in Cameroon with work, and they grow a lot of corn for making flour, like maize, I guess I would say. And among the stalks in the fields, they were growing watermelon plants. So it's a bit like two sisters, but in Cameroonian style, with corn and melons. And yeah, it just looked amazing. And they were just like these massive watermelons just like lying around in the corners. It was amazing.
So there are loads of stuff I'd love to grow, but there are things I have to think about that affect what I can and can't grow. And one of them, obviously living in Scotland, is the weather. Now, there is a bit of a myth that Scotland's incredibly cold, and to be honest, it's not. We don't get extremes of anything, so in summer, we don't really get extreme hot. Our summer is usually around the 20 to 23 degrees Celsius mark, so not super hot. We don't get a heap of really burning bright sun either, because even when it's hot, it tends to be like this. It tends to be quite cloudy. In winter, it's not extreme cold either. It's cold, but it's not like Canada cold. But what we do get that causes lots of problems for gardeners here is rain. A lot of rain. And that's the thing we have to fight with the most. So because we don't get those super hot long summers, we don't have a long growing season for hot crops like tomatoes and peppers. I get possibly about 100 to 120 days at most on a really good year. But for a lot of other crops, we get so much rain that they're not happy. So I struggle with things like basil. I can't grow that in the garden. I can grow it in the greenhouse, but not out in the garden. So there is something I would love to grow, and I can't. And it's exactly the same as with Malcolm. I would love to grow sweet potatoes, but I'd have to grow them in the greenhouse, and I've only got a small 8x6, and it would just take up too much space to grow. So it has to stay on my wish list, and it's not going to happen anytime soon.
Well, this is my pumpkin patch. Well, squash and pumpkins really. And I love pumpkins, but there's one that's eluded me. I've grown it for the last 2 years, and it's called the Munchkin pumpkin. You know, it's the small one that you slice off the top and stuff it with something tasty and pop it in the oven, and it's a meal for one. Fantastic. But 2 years trying, no success. Well, not quite no success. I have managed one, and I kept it. I know, it's bizarre. It seems to keep well. If you want an advertisement for pumpkins that keep well, this has got to be one of them. But I use it as a bit of a target. I will get there eventually, but I've got to keep trying to grow it. This year I've not bothered. Next year, it's on my list.
the thing I struggle with most growing are melons. So I have a few melons this year and they're actually going super well so far. Got another one here. Previous years I've always overwatered them. So I'm doing it slightly differently this year. I'm watering into pots in the ground instead, so I don't risk wetting the stem too much. And it's so far it seems to be working. But obviously it's my nemesis crop, so yeah, I'll count my chickens when I actually cut into my first ripe melon and I get to eat it. And what I'm gonna do with the first one is because all the ones I'm growing are small, obviously, because we're in the UK, and to get them to ripe, they kind of need to be the small variety. So I cut it in half is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna remove the seeds and I'm gonna have some ice cream in it and eat it like that. That's my dream. I do have another nemesis, which is cauliflower. They always get infested with aphids on my plot. Like I have no problems with all the other brassicas, but cauliflower I just can't seem to grow. Last year I managed to grow one absolutely stunning purple cauliflower, but besides that, nothing. So yeah, those are my little answers to
Well, one of the plants that I like to grow for early in the spring is purple sprouting broccoli. It gives you a fantastic early crop, and you sow it about now in the beginning of July, and at the end of July plant it out, and you can pretty much forget about it other than staking it, because it doesn't like its roots rocked backwards and forwards, and of course the winter months can bring some heavy winds. The other plant that is a bit of a no-brainer for me is garlic. So we get our garlic bulbs in the autumn and they get sown here in October, and you break up the bulb into the individual bulbets and put them into the ground and pretty much forget them. The winter months, the cold weather, enables them to produce those bulbs that we know from a whole garlic. And well, the harvesting time is around now. It's a couple more weeks for me, but I'm going to take one of these out and just show you. So this went in October, and there we are, a beautiful garlic bulb, which I'll dry now in the shed or the polytunnel. And this crop here will keep us going throughout the winter months. Fantastic.
So the question comes up a lot, and I get it a lot on my channel as well. What can you grow after summer? Once all the summer crops are in, all this sort of loveliness, we're right in the middle of summer now, start of July, and we've got all this lovely stuff in. Well, things like this beetroot, you can replant some of this, you can sow some more in modules, grow it on, plant it out, and they will stay in the ground all the way right up till nearly till Christmas, depending on the weather, even afterwards. In the sort of September time, you can plant your onions, your garlics, your elephant garlics. You can plant lettuces. You've got to look at the varieties and see which are frost hardy, which do well over the winters. You can even grow herbs like parsley and coriander. There is plenty out there. You can grow turnips, Swedes. I mean, the list is almost endless. Sometimes you've got to give things a little bit of protection, so you've got to look into it, read up on it, or ask, gardeners like us. But you can definitely grow on stuff over the winter. And for the stalwarts, the ones I always grow, like down in that bottom bed, they're Leeks for winter. They're multi-sown in big clumps. We'll be harvesting them all the way through till next March, maybe even into April. I've got a load of plants coming on inside the polytunnel that are purple sprouting broccoli. Now they're a brilliant hungry gap filler, and they will harvest all the way. Well, they'll start sort of March into April, around that sort of time in spring, so when there's pretty much not much else growing. So they're your staples. And if you've got indoor space like I have, I've got all those tunnels over there to grow stuff in. I can have things like cabbages and Chinese cabbages, wong bok and pak choys and mustards, chards, cauliflowers, broccoli, just whatever I can plant and get it in. But if you're in any doubt whatsoever, get a packet of seeds from Premier Seeds, pound a packet, sow a few seeds, plant them and see what happens. Your ground might be different to mine. You might be more protected or exposed to me. The best thing to do is get out there and have a go and enjoy it.
I'm just grabbing my seed box because I'm going to go and do some planting out. And that's the thing. So it is currently mid-July for me. It's going to sound depressing when I say this, okay? It's not meant to be depressing. It's just a fact, okay? As a gardener, we think of the seasons slightly differently. So I'm going to tell you that it is now getting to the point where we're past summer. No, sorry. I know it sounds horrible to say it's only mid-July, Eli. Sorry. It's true in gardening terms though. The reason I say that is this. We've passed the summer equinox now. So it means gradually the evenings are going to get shorter and slightly darker. But it also means we're going to get less of those really, really hot days. And that means we rethink our planting, because things like tomatoes and peppers love heat and we want them going early. But there are other plants that struggle when it's too warm and they just bolt or just come to nothing. So we can start planting them now, and that's what I'm going to do. I've got some gaps out there, so I'm going to be planting things like some lettuces, pak choy, and I'm going to be doing more sowings of carrots and beetroot, because those can all keep going past the midsummer point, and especially sort of pak choy, carrots, beetroot, that type of thing. You can keep cropping and getting crops from them well into autumn. And depending on your variety, some of them will even go past. Last year we were harvesting carrots in winter.
If you can think a bit ahead of time, planting out autumn fruiting raspberries in spring is one of the best investments you can do. They're super easy to grow. All you need to do is cut them back in winter and then they grow back. Obviously they're slightly invasive, so make sure you position them correctly. And then you have fruit in late summer, early autumn, and they keep going, for me anyway, until the weather gets too cold. Vegetables, lettuce is a good thing to sow now and also is super easy. Radishes are coming up again. They can be grown very easily either early spring or now when it's cooling down in late summer, early autumn. Other things I was mentioning before are the oriental greens, grow much better. So you'll have much more success growing pak choy in autumn than you ever would in spring. Otherwise, kale, you might find a little bit more finicky, as in you might need to cover it to protect them from pigeons or protect them from butterflies. But if you have those kind of paraphernalia, then it's fairly easy to grow kale, and then they will be cropping for you into winter.
Now, unheated greenhouse. This is the question I get asked most often. Everybody and their granny wants to know, what can you grow over winter in an unheated greenhouse? Now, the guys are about to give you some great advice. And as I've said, I've grown carrots in here over winter. You could even grow things like beetroot if you've got the space. Some of the autumn into winter lettuces, the pak choy, that kind of thing. They all do great. Just check your seed packets, because you get different varieties do well in different sort of times of the year. So you get things like autumn king, that type of thing. But I did a whole series of videos last winter where I monitored the temperature in my greenhouse, and I had it bubble wrapped for insulation, but it was unheated. So I every single day I've got a little digital thermometer sitting here that records the temperature every few seconds all through the day and night, and I can get it on my phone on Bluetooth. I can't get it back on its hanger, but I can get it on Bluetooth. So I monitored it, and what I discovered was, regardless of what the greenhouse companies and their advertising says, the greenhouse, if it's not heated, is actually, if it's insulated, only a few degrees warmer than the temperature outside. And if it's not insulated, unless it's actually sunny that day, it's not any warmer at all. So you need to think about that. You can't go mad. You're not going to be able to grow things like tomatoes and peppers in your greenhouse in Scotland unless it's heated during the winter. But you can protect things from the worst of the weather. So you can, but I kept my French tarragon going in here over the winter. It wasn't producing any leaves, I couldn't eat from it, but I kept it alive so that it came back early in the spring because it was protected from the frost. Okay, so that's things to think about, and the guys are now going to give you even more details.
This is my tomato forest, or part of it, in the largest of my tunnels. And you can see down here at the ground, there is bare ground in between them. Now, as these plants grow up, these leaves start to turn yellow or fold up like these do here. These will be removed to let light and air in underneath. And what that actually does is it lets the light in underneath. And you can see these smaller plants here. I've got a selection of kales and cabbages there. When they're of a size, I will plant them in between and around the tomato. So before they've even finished fruiting, those plants for winter will already be in the ground and growing away. And I've just popped a couple of examples up. That was last year. And these are examples of what you can grow through winter. So certainly the kales and cabbages, I mean, most of the brassicas you can grow undercover through the winter. I also add in some of the Japanese elements. So some of the mustards, the pak choys, the Chinese cabbages, the wongbok, all those type of things can grow over winter. Now, another thing that I also grow over winter, if I just spin you around, is in these beds here, what I've got already sown for winter harvest is carrots. So they'll continue over the winter, and I will be adding more stuff. You see over here, I've got a little crop of parsnips as well. So this bed mostly will carry on and grow things. And you see, I've got more seeds sown here to carry these things on. So if you want that advice, what can you grow in a cold polytunnel over winter, then brassicas are your first go-to. You can also do lettuces as well, but that's variety dependent.
So this little greenhouse is a 6x6 foot greenhouse, and I grew a lot of vegetables and greens over winter last year. And some of the best things to grow in a greenhouse over winter, unheated greenhouse, is lettuces, of course. They will do much better under cover without being exposed to all the rain and the wind. Also oriental greens like pak choi, what else? There you go, rapini and toit sim. I mean, rapini isn't an oriental green, but you know, it's one of those quick brassicas like mustard. Those things that tend to bolt when grown in spring in the UK, they grow really well over winter or into winter in an unheated greenhouse. Other things you can grow is garlic, which I'm tempted to do. Specifically elephant garlic I want to try, because supposedly you get even larger bulbs because of the increased warmth later in the season. And then there's the brassicas that you could have in there during the winter, like the kales, and you could potentially, if you have the space, even grow the smaller broccoli type plants and things like that. So there's quite a lot of options. Most things that are the cold tolerant plants you could grow over winter. So if you, for example, want to start your peas really early and you have the space, you could grow them in your greenhouse and they would grow quite well under cover. So there's a few options there.
Well, it would be wrong of me to wax lyrical about what you can grow in an unheated greenhouse or polytunnel, because in all honesty, I don't. And you may think, well, that's not very good use of a polytunnel, but I do have some uses for it in the winter months. I tend to dry my seeds in here because I save quite a lot of seed, and this bench is perfect for keeping them dry and continuing the drying process through the winter months. And the other thing is the harsh weather that we get in this area means that some garden plants wouldn't survive. And so I bring them into the polytunnel to get them through the winter months. So that fills quite a lot of the space. I could use this bed down here for growing some lettuce. There's plenty of lettuce that will grow during the winter months. And of course my carrots, which I grow in this trough, they continue to grow through the winter, and I can be harvesting those right through to January. And well, that makes them that much bigger. I get to the point where 1 carrot is more than a meal, which is fantastic.
So I hope today has been really useful for you guys. We haven't managed to answer all of the questions that came in just because of time, but hopefully we'll be able to do this again and we'll get more of your questions answered. But it has been lovely having all you new guys join us on the channel today, and it's been especially amazing having all the other YouTube gardeners join me, because it gets lonely sometimes.